The 20 Gupta-linked companies launch an urgent court application to prevent the Bank of Baroda from shutting its South African operations. A sixth suspect in the tragic Gqobo police station attack expected in court this morning. The controversial Seven Angels Ministries in Gqobo is expected to feature prominently when the CRL briefs the media this morning. Hello and welcome to Newsroom. A very happy Thursday to you. I'm Shante Yankees, coming to you live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg. A lot coming up between now and 12 p.m, including an interview with the new Minister of Police, General Becky Cele, your views on the top stories of the day as well as news from the continent. And not alone, Marumo Kagana is standing by with all our sporting highlights. Very good morning to you, Marumo.
Good morning to you. It's a very interesting sporting day as, of course, South Africa will be taking on Australia out in Durban on their first test cricket. Of course, the Proteas would want to forget about the dismal performance against India. This and more later on during the sports bulletin. We now hand you over to Shante with the headlines.
Your lead story at 9 o'clock, 20 companies belonging to the controversial Gupta family are expected to launch an urgent court application in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. This in an attempt to prevent the Bank of Baroda from shutting its South African operations. Well, last month, the South African Reserve Bank confirmed that the Bank of Baroda had notified the Register of Banks of its exits from South Africa. The Register, which is part of the South African Reserve Bank, is in discussions with the Bank of Baroda to ensure its orderly withdrawal from South Africa. The Indian bank was the last remaining banking institution to continue doing business with the controversial Gupta family, through which its companies allegedly laundered money. Meanwhile, the Bank of Baroda is challenging the order that the NPA should attach some of their South African assets. The NPA has argued that the bank was complicit in the alleged corruption by politically connected Gupta family. A sixth suspect is expected to appear in the Gqobo Magistrates Court for the police station attack. It is believed this suspect is one of the main members of the Gqobo Church. The suspect was arrested yesterday after pointing out a hidden firearm. Four other suspects appeared on Monday and another on Tuesday. The latest arrest is after the suspect was taken in for questioning. He later led the police to the Gqobo Seven Angels Ministries church premises at Nyanga village, where he allegedly pointed out a pistol inside a pit toilet. Investigative journalist Jacques Poe says it's absurd that his house at Riebeck Kasteel in the Western Cape was searched by the Hawks. Members of the Hawks arrived at his home with a search warrant yesterday afternoon. Poe's blockbuster book, The President's Keeper, was published last year and alleged, among other things, that the then President Jacob Zuma received a R1 million monthly salary from a benefactor for a few months after becoming president in 2009. Poe says he cooperated fully with the Hawks officials.
I have expected this raid for some time, but I didn't expect the raid to take place in February 2018, especially after Cyril Ramaphosa became the president. I think it is extremely short-sighted of them to raid the private premises of a journalist. I don't know what they thought they were going to get. But anyway, as I say, they were just doing their job, but somewhere up in the police, some brigadier or some general decided that my premises should be raided. Before Ramaphosa became the president, there were various police investigations against me. I thought that this would all end after the rise of Ramaphosa. But we were informed, my attorney was informed about 2 weeks ago that there's still a case against me that's now being investigated by a police general in the Free State. And then these hawks arrived on my doorstep. So I'm not sure what is going on or how serious these investigations are.
A full reaction on the story. We are now joined on the line by the South African National Editors Forum chairperson, Sam Kokeli. Very good morning to you. We thank you very much for your time this morning. What is your initial reaction to the Hawks raid at Jacques' house?
It is a shocking incident when you find a police official visiting a journalist at home and looking for documents. We see it as an abuse of resources and the police system to intimidate not only Jacques Paul but many other journalists who may now, following this incident, not confident enough to chase after stories about state corruption and to publish such. It is really a shocking development. It followed a few threats in the past to go after Jacques Paul by senior officials in government who wouldn't take kindly to him publishing what is in the public interest. And his book was very explosive in revealing the serious allegations about alleged corruption by then President Jacob Zuma and other senior officials in the state. Jacques Paul now says the complainant in the matter is the DG in the intelligence department, and Arthur Fraser. Arthur Fraser is mentioned in the book in a manner that is not flattering. So you can see the state coming out to abuse the state itself to intimidate Jacques Paul and many other journalists by extension.
Well, have you as SANEF actually been able to speak to Jacques with regards to the incident, around the details and essentially what happened? Any details as to what they were looking for, perhaps?
We don't know exactly. I mean, as Jacques says, it's really short-sighted to think you're going to find documents kept at home. And most importantly for us, I mean, we've heard in the past how they've articulated what the real issue is. They're saying he has revealed confidential information. I don't see how that is a crime. I mean, the basic duty of a journalist is to bring out information that is in the public interest and push that information, and sometimes quite forcefully, into the public domain. So kudos to him. He did a great job, and that is definitely not a crime. What they may want to argue is that the information he has is information that should not be handled by an outsider, somebody who is outside of the intelligence system, and they should be looking within the system itself and leave a journalist to carry on do the job he's supposed to do. He's done a wonderful job, and many other journalists have come out with great stories that have helped South Africans make informed decisions and better contributions to the debate about state capture and the political leadership in South Africa in the past 2 years or so.
Now, reports circulating around the story allude to that it could be a possible form of intimidation. Your views on that?
It absolutely, I mean, it serves exactly to do that. It tries to shut Jacques Paul up, but it shuts up many other people who potentially have great stories to publish in different forms. It could be TV, online, could be multimedia, social media, even in book forms. This is what it does. It really just tries to strike a blow at the media industry, and not just the media industry itself. It's about intimidating the people who inform journalists. It's about depriving the public the basic right to know, which is enshrined in the Constitution. So it does a great deal of a disservice to the South African, and it messes up the constitutional dispensation it's supposed to truly enjoy.
Now, you've obviously mentioned the issue that this then has against individuals, journalists, as well as the media and the freedom in which we can express as a whole. Essentially, what is SANEF planning to do going forward? Is there any action that SANEF does want to press going forward?
Look, we'll see. There are many ways that we can respond to this, and one is to work with Jacques Paul and his attorneys and give them support in whatever support he may need. At the same time, we're trying to have a meeting with the new police minister, Mr. Kipele, to have a conversation about this, and really is an attempt to get him to look at quite critically at the role of the Hawks and them. And they're supposed to be investigating the kind of crimes that Jacques Paul's book it talks about, and leave Jacques Paul to enjoy himself as a journalist to help our society. That is ultimately what we want. But we would also want to have a conversation with the IPID, the police watchdog, as to get them to what you have an interest in this matter, so that our state apparatus, including the police, are not abused by people who are protecting the interests of private individuals and the interests of corrupt politicians. We want to see South Africans enjoying their freedom. We want to see the state being freed from this terrible grip of the kind of political leaders we've had in our recent past, so that they can truly go back to the basic job of serving South Africans.
Thank you for your time this morning. South African National Editors Forum Chairperson Sam Kokeli. Of course, the Hawks' raid on Jacques Pauw's home in the Western Cape yesterday has revived old concerns regarding the role of authorities in dealing with whistleblowers. Speaking on Morning Live, Sam Sol from Amabungane Center for Investigative Journalism says that Pauw was targeted because he exposed the abuse of power as well as resources at the State Security Agency. Let's have a look.
I think Jacques Pauw also expressed that, he said he was expecting something like this just after the book was published, but not now, just after President Cyril Ramaphosa has been elected. And but I think it shows, the empire strikes back, and the empire is not dead. And the concerns that we have around the kind of the state security network that the former President Zuma built up, it's there, and there's serious concerns about what it does. He's being targeted because of reporting he did in his book on the State Security Agency. And anybody who's read The President's Keepers will be in no doubt that the information that he revealed about the State Security Agency was in the public interest. He reveals allegations of very serious abuses of power, abuses of resources at the State Security Agency. Yeah. And it's been a problem that we've been fighting in terms of security legislation, that there's not a public interest clause protecting journalists and other whistleblowers in terms of exposing secrets, or what the state might consider secrets, in the public interest. Yeah. The Secrecy Bill, the Secrecy Act that was passed, we had a long fight as R2K and Amabungane to get such a protection for whistleblowers and journalists acting in the public interest. That was rejected. That law has never been signed into law because we think it's still unconstitutional. And one of the reasons it's unconstitutional is that there is not that safeguard for whistleblowers and journalists.
Well, new Police Minister Bheki Cele has defended his tough talk on crime fighting. He spoke with SABC News earlier. This follows the Ngobo police massacre that has made headlines since it broke 2 weeks ago.
It's the third time I'm asked this question today alone. And I've raised this thing time and again. I'm raising it again. Somebody must show me where I've said that thing, either electronically or in the print media. That statement was never said. Yes, I have spoken tough, and I'll continue to speak tough. I've said, including at the funeral memorial service where I was speaking a few days back at Ngobo, to say, police cannot die with the guns in their hands. They must defend themselves and defend the communities that they're working with. Secondly, do that within the law. South Africa is a constitutional country. It's got laws. Go and read very well. Section 49 of the Criminal Procedure Act directs how the police must work. We'll stick to the law. We will be tough when we deal with the brutal, those criminals that kill police and kill the communities, but we'll understand that not everybody is that such of a criminal in South Africa, and we act within the law, working within what has been recommended by the National Development Plan, by CRL Commission going forward, and make sure that South Africans are safe. Is a country with human rights, and we must deal with that within the law and the Constitution of South Africa.
Well, calls are mounting for the shutdown of Manqoba's Seven Angels Church, which was used as a hideaway by the gang allegedly responsible for the deadly attack on the Ngobo police station last week. According to reports, the church is being run as a sex cult and had over 100 girls aged between 12 and 21, which were used as sex slaves. To discuss this further, we are now joined from our Sea Point studios, Michael Swain, and Executive Director of Freedom of Religion South Africa. Very good morning to you, Mr. Swain. Firstly, can Manqoba's Seven Angels Church actually be classified as a cult?
I think what they can be classified as is a criminal organization. And I think we have to be very careful when we start to talk about religious and freedom of religion issues, which is obviously really in the spotlight at the moment. Because the bottom line is that you can call yourself whatever you like, but if you commit a crime, then you are a criminal. You can be a church and call yourself a church, but as soon as you cross over the line and you start to commit crimes, you are a criminal and you need to be dealt with as a criminal. This is not a freedom of religion issue. You cannot hide criminal activities behind freedom of religion, and that is exactly what was happening in this case.
Now, Mr. Swain, who is likely to join a cult? What are some of the characteristics?
I think the problem here is the question of gullibility. And how do you actually stop people from being gullible? The answer is you have to give people the freedom to make up their own minds. You can't simply take gullibility and try and form legislation about it or intervene in it, because you start to really interfere with people's basic rights. If you want to protect people who are gullible, then you need to stop things like the lotto, for example, because clearly there's some gullibility there. But in this instance, how do you stop people? Well, I think the first thing you do is you look at what the people who are actually running these things are doing. You see, religion is something which is very personal. And a belief, the Constitutional Court has already decided, can be bizarre, illogical, or irrational, and yet it's valid. The question is, of course, and you're free to believe it. Absolutely, you're free to believe it. But the question is, when does that start to become something that is unacceptable? And the answer to that is when it starts to become illegal, when laws start to be broken. And that was exactly the case here. 2016, this case came to the light. The Eastern Cape Department of Social Development investigated it, they took some children away, and they called in the CRL Rights Commission to investigate. And that's exactly what they did. Mrs. Galuva, the chairperson, is on television, recorded, saying to the so-called angel of this church, what you're doing is illegal and the law will deal with you. The question we have to ask in this tragic, tragic situation is, why was the law not enforced? What did the CRL do, given that they have both the duty and the powers to do it? What did they do to activate law enforcement, organs of state to investigate this thing so that this situation could potentially have been avoided? Because they're asking for powers, but they have the powers already. It's in their act in Section 5(1)(k).
Definitely. Now, having a look at it from a mental point of view, is brainwashing and mind control synonymous with the cult, as members of the Manqoba Seven Angels Church were actually made to give away their pension funds to the church, their belongings, their cars and any other assets?
Again, I don't know exactly at all what techniques or whatever might have been made there. But I think what we have to look at again is to come back to the real question at hand, is that people are entitled to believe what they believe and to do what they do within the law. If there was fraud, if there was malfeasance, if the people who were in charge of this organization were doing anything illegal, and it is obvious that they had underage people, they were preventing children from going to school, there was illegal guns, there was probably certainly financial shenanigans going on. The question is, did they break the law? And if they did, and if people knew that they did, which the CRL in this instance certainly did, why was the law not enforced? Why were not the relevant organs of state called in to deal with it before it became this terrible tragedy?
Definitely. Now, there have been those calls now for specifically the religious sector to be more closely regulated. Are you supporting those calls?
No, not at all. Because again, if you're simply trying to regulate something because you're not enforcing the laws, you're simply putting another layer of laws, which again, you're going to have to enforce. And the second thing is, of course, you can't regulate religion like you can regulate accounting or law or medicine. There you have a set standard of parameters and issues. Religion is fluid. So I can believe in the man in the moon. I can believe that somebody is the angel Gabriel. That's okay. I'm allowed to believe that. I'm even allowed to teach and preach that. But the moment I step over the mark and I start to commit illegal acts, that's when religion is regulated, because we live in a regulated society. We live under the rule of law. And that's when the law needs to step in and stop me. That's when the state has an obligation. But as soon as the state starts to regulate religion on the basis of, well, do we think that's acceptable? Do we think this is acceptable in terms of people's belief systems? Then you are seriously starting to infringe on people's freedom of religion, because you're infringing on their freedom of thought, belief and conscience.
That definitely seems to be the issue here then, in having to look where those parameters can actually be defined, and one person believing that it is part of their religion and it's something that they form part of, but then again when it goes over a certain line, then it's termed illegal.
Well, that's exactly correct. I mean, for example, let's take a very well-known Christian religion, Roman Catholicism. Roman Catholicism believes that when you take the elements of communion, the bread and the wine, they actually turn into the body and the blood of Jesus Christ. Some people would say that that is irrational, illogical, cannot be proven, but it's a faith issue, it's a belief issue. There's nothing wrong with it. They're entitled to do that, of course they are, because it doesn't harm anybody. But it's when you actually cross that line and laws start to be broken, and we have every law in place in this country. Every issue that the CRL Rights Commission report identified where crazy things were happening, those crazy things weren't religious issues, they were criminal issues, they were legal issues, and the law can be enforced and must be enforced. One of our recommendations, in fact, to the CRL Rights Commission in the submissions we made once they had produced their report was that perhaps they should consider bolstering the kind of like enforcement arm of their operation so that they have the capacity to inform and to recommend, which their own act gives them the power to do, to relevant organs of state to go and deal with some of these aberrations. But as soon as you start to control people's belief, then you start to run into problems because you're literally undermining fundamental human rights.
It's quite a confusing issue. Of course, you've mentioned that you're not necessarily calling for more regulation around the religious sector, but at the same time, we're seeing cults come forward. We're seeing issues that have happened, such as the Ingcobo police station attack, take place, and those are coming from religious sectors, religious forms that are cult-like.
Yes, and that's true. But you see, the question is, when does the state actually get involved? If I decide to form a religion and I'm actually doing nothing illegal, I mean, let's take my example of, you know, I believe that there's a man in the moon and the moon is made of cheese, and my followers we meet every Friday and we go out into the garden and we howl at the moon at a full moon and we eat cheese. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you might say that's completely bizarre and crazy, and I would happen to agree with you. But the question is it wrong? Is it illegal? But when I start conning people out of money under false pretenses, when I start using young girls as sex slaves, when I start stopping children from going to school, when I start having illegal guns in my possession and on my premises, that's when the law must intervene. And they should have intervened because they knew about the situation in Ingcobo, and yet for some bizarre reason, no follow-up was taken. And I believe that is the question that the CRL Commissioner and the CRL Commission in particular need to answer, because they were there in 2016, they knew this was going on, they had the power and the duty to intervene, and yet apparently nothing happened. And I think that's the question that Parliament should be asking them.
Now, just before we wrap it up and bring it back all the way to basics, do you think that more needs to be done to actually educate and teach people to not believe everything that they hear and see, specifically in the religious sector, and just to be, you know, somewhat cautious?
100%. And the portfolio committee, the COGTA portfolio committee, which looked into the CRL Rights Commission's report, made a recommendation which we 100% support, which is the religious community should be given the opportunity to self-regulate. And a major part of that was a call to have a national religious consultation to develop a code of ethics, which is, if you like, the responsibilities that are the flip side of religious freedom rights. And that, again, the CRL Rights Commission would then have a vital role of actually informing people of that, because then you know what to expect. And we can let that information go out and disseminate it as broadly as possible. Unfortunately, there will always be some people who will still probably fall into deception, but let that happen, because then you have a benchmark and a standard by which anyone can be judged who is forming themselves into whatever organization or expression of belief that they want in this country.
Again, those parameters around, you know, the benchmarks and where one can draw the line and where one cannot. What do you think are, or where do you think are the loopholes in situations such as this? Where do you think are loopholes specifically that the CRL could actually look into going forward?
Again, that was another recommendation by the COGTA Portfolio Committee, is to look at the existing legislation that we have, which, as I said, every incident that was identified in the CRL Rights Commission's report where abuse was being committed is covered by existing laws, and satisfactorily so. For example, you may be aware that just literally, I think yesterday, the so-called Prophet of Doom was sentenced to 3 years or 30,000 rand in jail, having already been interdicted from spraying anybody else with Doom or any other chemical. So there we see somebody who was a cult doing a crazy thing, but the law intervened successfully. He's been dealt with. And if there are loopholes that maybe people are getting around, one of the recommendations of the COGTA Portfolio Committee was exactly that. Tighten the loopholes, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Regulation of religion is simply unworkable, unnecessary, and unconstitutional.
How essentially is it unconstitutional? On what basis are you saying that it's unconstitutional?
It's unconstitutional because... Well, it's unconstitutional on the basis that as soon as you start to evaluate doctrine and to decide whether a doctrine is or is not valid, then you have affected and fundamentally infringed upon people's rights to believe whatever they want to believe and to preach whatever they want to preach. Again, we can believe what we want to believe, we can preach what we want to preach, but we still live in a law-bound society, and we must live within the regulations of the law. But when you start getting into, well, is that belief okay or not, and if it's not, we're going to shut it down, then you have a problem. If it switches into the grounds of illegality or criminality, then by all means shut it down. That's what the state should do.
Definitely. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. They're very interesting conversation, of course, from Michael Swain, an Executive Director from Freedom of the Religion of South Africa, speaking specifically around the parameters of law, the religious sector, as well as cults and possible loopholes that we have in our CRL. On today's question of the day here on SABC Newsroom, we have also been focusing on the Hawks raid on the house of investigative journalist Jacques Poe. We'll have a look at some of the tweets. For now, though, let's take a short break here on SABC Newsroom.
Violence against women, it also talks to such behavior where teachers, instead of educating kids and give them dignity, they strip them of their dignity.
The First Lady.
The First Lady, her action, it's just unacceptable. I must say that it cannot be condoned. If I had it my way, I would say we had to act and make sure that he goes to jail.
This scourge is not ceasing.
The angry people, the intolerant, it's so huge. So then the scourge finds itself within that particular environment. You cannot say that it's a standalone. It's influenced by social ills, economic challenges.
Join me in Port Said live every Monday to Thursday at 17:30.
Welcome back to SABC Newsroom. Well, the home of investigative journalist and author Jacques Poe's home in Riebeek Kasteel in the Swartland in the Western Cape province was actually raided by the Hawks yesterday. So today we're asking you, what do you make of it? Is it an infringement of rights? We've spoken to the SANEF chairperson there this morning. Let's have a look at some of the tweets that are coming in. Zami says, well, in order for them to thank the guy of exposing corruption so that their work is easy, they can now just do the arrest. So far, them to fight a person who did what he was supposed to do in a long time, it's them being yes that. Nazim says it's good, but the Hawks must not forget to go and search Nkandla. Zuma may be hiding some more information there. Hashtag Jacques Poe. And Michael says the Hawks are simply doing their job, and Jacques Poe has been playing with fire the last few months, trying to be a hero while stepping on people's toes in the process. So he deserves whatever comes his way. Let's have a look at our poll. Our poll for today, we're asking, should the bearing of the old apartheid flag be criminalized? Let's have a look. Over 300 tweets coming in, or votes rather coming in. 83% of you agreeing, saying yes. Nazim says, I really think it must be criminalized because it brings memories of apartheid. Hashtag old flag. Trish says that will just give it more power. Perhaps. Tabu says, for apartheid flags, yes, that's an insult to South Africans, more especially to us blacks. We forgive apartheid and now we don't feel old scares. Thank you very much for participating. Both our question and our poll on our Twitter platforms. You can continue to do so on @SABC Newsroom. We will be having a look at all your comments rather. We've gotten views also from Chairperson from Senate. They're giving us views. Is it an infringement of rights? If you think so, we'll comment on our question and both our poll. Let's have a look now at what's happening online. We'll have a look at our Facebook page this morning. The National Union of Mine Workers, NUM, says that workers of the Gupta-linked Optimum coal mine in Mpumalanga will not return to work until all the workers have been paid their salaries. And then the National Prosecuting Authority is today expected to oppose Atul Gupta's application in the Bloemfontein High Court to challenge the freezing of 10 million rand from his personal bank account. And finally, still with the NPA, the National Prosecuting Authority head Xolisi has expressed his willingness to return to his position at the NPA. Simply search for SABC Newsroom on Facebook, follow us and interact with us. Let's have a look now at what's making headlines front page and centre on our newspapers this morning. In the continent, we'll start off in Zimbabwe. The Herald reports that President Mnangagwa rescued a Zimbabwean woman and her 3 children who were stranded in the Democratic Republic of Congo for the past 3 years, finally flying them back home on a presidential plane. Further up north in Nigeria, the Daily Trust says the federal and state governments have a 3-year combined budget of 44 trillion nairas, but only 1.8 trillion nairas, or 4.2%, has voted for health. And finally, in Swaziland, the Swaziland Observer reports water levels at Lobuvane and Hawane dams are at full capacity following the heavy rains from last week through to the weekend.
Baroga FC humbled Benny McCarthy and his cohort, Cape Town City FC, with a resounding 2-0 drubbing in their only ABSA Premiership match played last night.
What a finish!
And Serena Williams pips Caster Semenya to the Laura's Sportswoman of the Year award as she got honored for shattering an 18-year-old record when she took her 7th Australian Open earlier this year.
Special assignment. Crime keeps the society in terror and pain. Why so?
If someone phones me, tells me, okay, look, you need a solver, and I get you all driving, I'll take it.
What pushes normal people to be so hard, heartless, and brutally kill one another?
The other side of it could be more for their own psychological need. It might be part of a sexual fantasy that they have. It could be about power and control.
After proper investigation is followed, the perpetrator gets arrested.
It's part of massive process. And I'll take into account payments. I think justice is served.
Emotional scars remain.
We would pay any price to get him back, and the sad reality is that it's gone.
Special assignment. We unravel the truth every Sunday at 21:30.
President Cyril Ramaphosa undertakes his first official foreign assignment with a 3-nation tour in the SADC region. SA's top diplomat believes that South Africa's relationship with Russia will continue to be based on mutual self-interest even under the President Cyril Ramaphosa's rule. Well, leading at the half hour, President Cyril Ramaphosa will undertake his first official foreign assignment on Friday when he visits 3 countries in the SADC region. The 3-nation tour will include Angola, Namibia and Botswana. Well, the first stop for President Ramaphosa on his official visit will be Angola. Angola is the current chair of the Organ of Defense, Peace and Security Troika. South Africa, on its part, is chairing the regional body SADC. He will hold talks with President João Lourenço, who also has been in office for a couple of months after the stepping down of longtime leader Eduardo dos Santos. On the very same day, he will travel to Namibia, which is the incoming chair of SADC. President Ramaphosa will include and conclude his trip by visiting Botswana. The president will also use the opportunity to bid farewell to President Ian Khama, who's vacating office in March after 2 terms in office. We're now joined in studio by our foreign editor, Ms. Sophie Mokoena. Very good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Morning.
Essentially, what do you make of the 3-nation tour that is going to be taken by President Cyril Ramaphosa?
Yes, President Cyril Ramaphosa will visit Angola, Namibia and Botswana in his capacity as the current chair of SADC. In Angola, it is important because Angola is currently the chair of Organ on Politics, Defense and Peace. You know that there are problems in the DRC. There has been a push that the country must go to elections. Kabila is non-committal, citing the issue of resources, and people are fleeing DRC in huge numbers. We know that the camp in the border near Zambia is packed with people who have fled the DRC. But secondly, in the Great Lakes region, if DRC is not stable, it affects the entire peace and security in the Great Lakes region. Namibia, it is important because it is the incoming chair. South Africa will hand over the chairmanship to Namibia next year. And then in terms of Botswana, it is critical because you know that the SADC head office are based in Gaborone, Botswana. And he must go and see the people who are working there, particularly the Secretary of SADC, Dr. Stegamina Tax. You know that Dr. Stegamina Tax was in Lesotho recently. Lesotho is another challenge for the region. You know that currently President Ramaphosa is also a mediator or a facilitator in Lesotho. Therefore, one is asking a question whether is it possible for him to chair and also to be the facilitator. You don't expect him to hold both positions. I suspect he's going to hand over to somebody to facilitate the process so that as the chair of SADC, he can be able to come up with a final decision when presentations are made in terms of all these countries. Secondly, in Botswana in particular, you know that President Ian Khama will be leaving office this month, and I think it's a way to say bye-bye to President Ian Khama, which brings me to during the funeral of the late former President Masire, a joke that Ian Khama made when he said President Ramaphosa, when he becomes the president, he must change the title of South Africa using deputy president rather than vice president, in line with what is being used in the SADC region. So I think also to say farewell that the Khama.
Yeah, definitely. From a continental body, what is South Africa's approach and what are the changes that we're going to see, if any?
Well, in terms of the continental body, the AU, his first appearance is likely to be in Rwanda. Towards the end of March, there's a special summit in Rwanda, the African Union Summit. You know that currently President Paul Kagame is the chair at the heads of state level of the institution or the African body. He is also tasked with responsibility to draw a plan to implement the AU reforms. I know our former governor, Ntatiti Domboweni, is part of that team that was working with President Paul Kagame to come up with the proposal in terms of restructuring of the AU or the reforms. And I think the heads of state, they will be there and they will be discussing this. I expect President Ramaphosa to be there. That will be his first appearance. I expect people like Mnangagwa, George Weah. We have young, not so young, but a different layer of leadership on the continent to be grappling with that document of the reforms. in terms of the AU. I am expecting him to be there, and South Africa is playing a prominent role in terms of peace and security on the continent. We have many troops deployed in different parts of the continent, and I think South Africa must always be seen as leading in terms of ensuring that there's development, economic development, there's peace, there's stability on the continent, and also to nurture the relations. You know, South Africa believes in the African perspective.
Definitely. Speaking of engagements on a global front, what are we expecting to see some of the engagements with regards to the inclusion of our president this year?
Well, he has his work cut out. The G20 summit is coming this year, the Commonwealth in London, the UN General Assembly in September. For me, what is critical is the UN General Assembly in September, because there you also have on the sideline a peace summit, and the peace summit because this is the year to honor Nelson Mandela, and the UN took a decision to host this peace summit after South Africa made a proposal that was approved by SADC region, and then the continent and the world at large. And Ramaphosa, having worked very close with President Mandela, late President Mandela, as part of the negotiations, I think him going there in September, perhaps presenting on behalf of South Africa, will be a historic moment, and he's got better insight and perhaps a perspective to share in terms of Madiba, what Madiba would like to see at this moment in terms of the global affairs. There's too much tension in the peninsula, the Korean peninsula. There are lots of problems in the Middle East. Even the continent itself is grappling with matters of peace and security. And I think that will be another important appearance, but secondly, part of the General Assembly debates. And my question is, you know, you get allocated time in terms of the General Assembly debates. I wonder whether South Africa will get the best spot, or again, it will be a night shift. Yeah,
we're going to have to wait and see. Thank you very much. So informative, as always. Foreign editor here at SABC, Sophie Mokwena. Thank you very much for your time this morning. We're having a look now at some international news. One of South Africa's top diplomats has told the SABC that South Africa's relationship with Russia will continue to be based on mutual self-interest as President Ramaphosa shapes his new government. The country's relationship with its old ally came under scrutiny during the Zuma years, with the controversial nuclear deal being thrown out by a high court for breaking rules of fair play. But in Moscow, there's still hope the two countries can forge deals. Dan Ashby has more.
Would you raise your right hand and say, "So help me God"?
So help me God.
And so a new page in South African politics begins, with the finance minister known for being robust with Russia returning once again. As it all unfolded, experts in Moscow gathered to remember the life of ANC hero Oliver Tambo. But the cabinet was on the minds of many.
President Putin and President Zuma were famously close, but the rise of Cyril Ramaphosa is seen as bad news for Russia's ambitions to build nuclear power plants in South Africa. And this cabinet reshuffle makes that seem even less likely.
Whatever happens to the ill-fated nuclear deal, one of South Africa's top diplomats said Russia will remain a friend.
He will always carry the good relations we hold with various countries in the world. One of them is the Russian Federation. South Africa has a strategic relationship with this country, and it was agreed upon through very serious high considerations of interest, of our own national interest in particular, but also Russia entered into this strategic interest with South Africa for its own national interests.
A high court threw out Russian nuclear giant Rosatom's agreement to build power stations, saying it broke rules of fair play. But Russia still hopes that President Ramaphosa might be good for business anyway.
Although we have now some problems with Rosatom, maybe you know about it, but I think maybe that Ramaphosa could play a very good role also for our cooperation.
But what shape and form that cooperation will take is not clear. President Ramaphosa has said the country cannot afford nuclear stations. So just as his government is turning a new page, so too is Russia-South African relations. Dan Ashby, SABC News, Moscow.
Well, thank you very much for being here. Thank you.
Well, indeed, let's hand over to Marumo Kakana. He is standing by with all your sporting highlights when we come back.
Warm greetings from the sports desk. First test match between South Africa and Australia kicks off today in Durban. The fourth match test series between South Africa and Australia kicks off today in Durban. The South African cricket captain, Faf du Plessis, says that the test series between South Africa and Australia provides for a great entertainment with both passionate cricket sides ready for their challenge. Since readmission, the Aussies have not lost a test series on South African soil. Ajax Cape Town moved out of the relegation zone after defeating SuperSport United by 2-0 at Athlone Stadium last night. The Urban Warriors, whose goals were scored by former United players Fagri Lakay and Mario Boysen, climbed to 14th place on the log on 24 points from 23 matches. Let's take a look at the goals.
It's been that easy for him because of how Ajax have set up the stall. Now lost that. Lakay, goal! Against his old club, he's not going to celebrate it. A little unlucky to lose out there. Kabwe will have a second bite. Kabwe will get the cross in. Chance goal! That is a goal! Tucked away by Mario Boysen with the predatory instinct that a top striker would be absolutely proud of.
And now for a look at the Absa Premiership fixtures that you can look forward to this coming weekend.
Stephen Pienaar here. Today I'm announcing my retirement from football. I just want to say thanks to my mom, my family, and all the clubs that I've played for. And the supporters, of course. How can I forget you guys? Thanks for the love throughout my career. Follow me on social media. There's an announcement coming up soon, and you guys will be the first to know. Thank you for the love.
And of course, that's a former Bafana and Everton midfield player. Stephen Pienaar has retired from professional football. Skilaki returned to South Africa at the start of the current campaign to join Bidvest Wits, but he was released towards the end of 2017. Paralympian Natalie du Toit gave evidence of infighting within the South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee, resulting in very little constructive work being done. Du Toit was speaking at the Ministerial Committee of Inquiry into the SASCOC governance matters, and the 34-year-old is in the chairperson, of the Athletics Commission.
Du Toit painted a picture of a dysfunctional board. She spoke in length about the infighting at board level that has led to important decisions not being taken.
There's a lot of, I think, personal fighting, if I can call it that, so people actually blame other people. And a lot of core business is not really taken care of because of this.
Another board member, Meryl King, who is part of the Finance Commission, gave submissions about a divided board that does not take care of its athletes. She discredited former CEO Tabi Reddy.
For so many years, we've tried to have a voice against what's been going on, and the things just get swept under the carpet.
The inquiry continues next week, Monday. Lebohang Dube, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Australian Mick Fanning has done it all from winning 3 world titles to pinching a shark bite, but it has caught up with the surfing icon who will retire as a professional next month. The 36-year-old, nicknamed White Lightning, announced on Wednesday, February the 28th, that he will hang up his surfboard in March after Rip Curl Pro at Bells Beach, where he won his first championship tour title as a wild card in 2001. Fanning claimed the world titles in 2007 and 9 and 2013, but grabbed international headlines for his encounters with the 2 sharks in 3 years at the J-Bay Open. He was dragged off his board and had to punch a great white to escape before being helped from the water in South Africa in 2015 live on television. The footage of the attack being seen more than 25 million times on YouTube. Another encounter 2 years later saw him being plugged to safety. And that's your sports at this hour. Up next is your weather forecast.
Oh, thank you very much, Marumo. Taking a look at your satellite image, we're seeing lots of cloudy weather here just to the north of Mozambique into Tanzania, central Angola, and of course here in the northern part of Botswana, including places like Kasane into Zimbabwe. Expecting to see this cloud development getting even worse as the day progresses. But here over the southern parts, we're just seeing lots of high-level cloud, cirrus cloud, the type that doesn't really bring any rainfall early on, but you're expecting development later on in the day, and with that, we're expecting isolated thunderstorms over the northwest province, the southern parts of Gauteng, and in towards the Free State, but scattered showers are expected for the eastern parts of the Eastern Cape province, and isolated thunderstorms here along the southern coastline. Clear skies continue today for the northern Cape's interior and of course along Namibia's coastline, while some scattered showers are expected for tomorrow here in places like Zambia into Malawi and Mozambique, and along the southern coastline, we're still expecting those isolated thunderstorms tomorrow with a small chance of 60% there along the southern part of KwaZulu-Natal. Scattered showers continue in places like Tanzania. Temperatures for tomorrow are expected to be 29 in Polokwane and Mahikeng, while over the central Free State we're expecting a high of 30 in Bloemfontein, Kimberley at 32. Isolated thunderstorms from the southern part of KwaZulu-Natal, leaving places like Ladysmith at 29 with Pietermaritzburg, while over the central interior now we're seeing clear skies and hot temperatures here along the western coastline, highs of 32 there in Vredendal, while over the interior of the Western Cape we're seeing lower maximum temperatures, high of 23 there in Beaufort West, and of course along the coastal areas it is still quite cool in places over the Western Cape province. Eastern Cape province, although we're seeing warm conditions today, further north we're seeing Zimbabwe with those heavy rains, especially in the northern parts from Harare going towards Lilongwe, expecting a high of 21, warm conditions in Bulawayo 22, while in Windhoek the temperatures are also quite cool today, significantly dropping from yesterday to 27 today. Mahajanga peaking at 32. Continued rains here in Madagascar. It has been for the past couple of days and it's continuing today and even tomorrow. While we look at places like Kinshasa, we're expecting partly cloudy today. It's a break from the rains that we've been having, while CBD is expecting some isolated thunderstorms with a high of 30 degrees. Heavier rains in places like Goma, Kampala in Rwanda, and of course in Kenya. Nairobi peaking at 19 for Friday. On Friday, as tomorrow, while Mogadishu is at 31, partly cloudy skies only. Further north, we're seeing these hot conditions. It's clear skies, but the temperatures are they have dropped from yesterday. In Khartoum, today is at 33, cooler as compared to yesterday, including Al Fashar, cooler as compared to yesterday. But along the coastline, in the northern coastline, Cairo is warmer. It's at 24 today with Luxor at 30 degrees. Clear skies over the interior and towards Chad, Niger, including most of Mali, but southern parts of Mali expecting partly cloudy conditions. We're seeing the capital, Bamako, at 38 degrees, while hot temperatures in Niamey will bring about temperatures to 21. Along the coastal areas, still seeing cooler conditions. Dakar at 21, even though it is clear skies, but your temperature will be as low as 21. Further north, rains and strong winds are expected in Marrakesh towards Rabat and in towards the Algeria's interior. We're seeing partly cloudy conditions and some rains there with a high of 19. Cooler temperatures over Algeria, its interior, with a high of 19, including Tunis there, where we're seeing some isolated thunderstorms for today. But on Friday, we're seeing only partly cloudy skies with a high of 20. Oh, that's all the weather I have. Remember, everywhere you go, take the weather with you.
Yeah, everywhere you go, take the weather with you. Will we be having a look at the weather and taking it with us in sports?
Of course. I mean, today is the first day of that 5-day cricket between South Africa and Australia in Durban. How's the weather going to be like for this encounter?
Down in the southern parts, looking at Durban starting today and until what time? Until when?
The next 5 days. So it will be today until what? Next week, Monday?
Okay, generally what we're having rains developing over the interior, then moving towards the coastal areas. Durban, well, I'm sure you know, Marumo, Durban is down there. We're having cloudy conditions over the interior, moving towards the coastal areas. So what Durban can expect is just partly cloudy conditions. Not a lot of rain, but cooler temperatures, so it feels cooler just due to the cloudiness that you'll see but
No,
not really.
definitely for the cricket fanatics, Shante, that will mean that at least it's a 5-day treat.
Yeah,
because you know
definitely.
when you're watching South Africa play against Australia, you don't want to be dealing with weather and the likes. But I guess we can take the weather with us.
Yes, definitely. It's still no rain forecast for Cape Town. No, we're just gonna have to wait and see for that. No.
No.
Unfortunately, and it's worse. It's getting clear skies, as you saw. The clear skies are starting in all the way north, Alexandra Bay, going to our southern parts, including Hermanus. Just clear skies in Cape Town, unfortunately.
You know, you'll never think that Cape Town is part of South Africa.
I don't know
because you
what
look
they
at the
do.
weather chart and it's raining all over the country, but Cape
But
Town.
Cape
Oh
Town.
no.
On that note, let's wrap it up. Thank you very much for joining us here on Newsroom. We'll have a look at you, or rather we'll join you again at the top of the hour for your headlines.
South Africa is in need of a frank dialogue. My name is Onkgopote JJ Tabani. Join me every Sunday at 8:30 on SABC News Channel 404 as we speak to leaders of society, business and government about the state of our nation. Come now, let's talk frankly.
The fossil hominid sites at Sterkfontein Caves, known as Cradle of Humankind, were declared a World Heritage Site on the 2nd of December 1999. The Cradle of Humankind covers an area of over 47,000 hectares of privately owned land northwest of Johannesburg. Most of the site is on dolomite, a rock type which is slightly soluble in water. There are currently over 200 caves on the site and 13 fossil sites. We know that Australopithecus africanus were present in the cradle from about 2 to 4 million years ago. It is generally known that hominids are close relatives of human ancestors.
We're shooting a campaign. We're telling genuine stories from real people that have been affected by the SABC. It's also interesting to get the backstory in terms of their dreams to be on screen and eventually getting the pleasure to do that. And understanding that they're communicating on a platform that speaks to millions of people. It speaks to how the SABC can fulfill its mandate.
The SABC represents the opportunity for so many young South Africans, for old South Africans, to be able to look at the world that they may not experience any other way.
People should continue to pay their TV license because it allows the SABC to bring quality programming.
The TV license is really part of the lifeblood of the channel and the corporation.
When you're listening to your favorite jams, you're listening to your favorite radio DJ, you must know that you made it possible by paying your TV license.
It's such a holistic process that goes into TV licenses. It's not only one part where we say South Africans have to pay for TV licenses. You pay a TV license because you get so much value out of it, and that's the content that you get every single day on the SABC platforms.
I have been in the film industry now for 51 years. I am quite satisfied with the evolution of television now that you have got a lot of actors and you have got a lot of crew members. We should also play part of paying our licenses because I think it's proper.
News at 9. We go beyond the headlines of the day's breaking news to bring you all the angles and in-depth analysis of stories. We go beyond the surface, including on how it will impact your life. Join us every day at 9 to zoom in on the day's big stories.
Well, 20 Gupta-linked companies launch an urgent court application to prevent the Bank of Baroda from shutting its South African operations. 6 suspects in the tragic Noble police station attack expected in court this morning. The controversial Seven Angels Ministries in Noble is expected to feature prominently when the CRL briefs the media this morning.
And from Bafana and Everton midfielder Steven Skilakipina hangs up his boots. And of course, we'll also give you all the sports details that are happening down in Durban. As you know, South Africa will be up against Australia in their first test cricket match. But this and more later on during the sports bulletin. We now hand you over to Shante with your headlines.
Very much. Indeed, thank you very much, Maru. A lot coming up between now and 12 p.m, including an interview with the newly appointed police minister, as well as news stories from the African continent. Let's have a look at your lead story at this hour. Well, 20 companies belonging to the controversial Gupta family are expected to launch an urgent court application in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. This in an attempt to prevent the Bank of Baroda from shutting its South African operations. Last month, the South African Reserve Bank confirmed that the Bank of Baroda had notified the Register of Banks of its exits from South Africa. The register, which is part of the South African Reserve Bank, is in discussions with the Bank of Baroda to ensure its orderly withdrawal from South Africa. The Indian Bank was last remaining bank institution to actually continue doing business with the controversial Gupta family, through which its companies allegedly laundered money. Meanwhile, the Bank of Baroda is challenging the order that the NPA should attach some of their South African assets. The NPA has argued that the bank was complicit in alleged corruption by the politically connected Gupta family. Well, state capture and the Estina dairy project in the Free State have been a political hot potato, and the Estina dairy project is where millions of rands were paid out into bank accounts of members of the Gupta family and their associates instead of the intended beneficiaries. Well, speaking to SABC News, Police Minister Bheki Cele, as a department, they are looking forward to the State Capture Commission.
We are looking forward to the commission working on that. The sooner the better, and the preparations are quite close now going there. But that does not stop police doing their job. I'm sure you have seen some work from the South African police led by Hawks again at the Estina farm and other things. There are people that police are trying to find. Some already have the warrant of arrest. We don't find them, but we are chasing, telling a story where we are. We're not going to do it. But exactly, that must happen. The state capture must be corrected. The individuals responsible for that must be found and deal with them in the proper way and get the consequences they deserve.
Well, speaking of the Hawks and that infamous Frida dairy farm, or Estina dairy farm project, what leads are you able to give us at this point in time with those individuals that the Hawks are in pursuit of, and any details around the situation?
Well, there are investigations going on there, and I'm not about to jeopardize those investigations by telling what are we following, which people that are we targeting, or are they part of that investigation. Remember, there are procedures that you must follow suspect people, you get the warrant of arrest, you deal with the NPA. So I'm not going to sit here and talk about those things when all those procedures have not been followed. Allow those procedures to go on, and surely in a not very distant future, South African police will round up on this one and the nation will know what's the story.
Investigative journalist Jacques Poe says that it's absurd that his house at Riebeek Kasteel in the Western Cape was searched by the Hawks. Members of the Hawks arrived at his home with a search warrant yesterday afternoon. Poe's blockbuster book, The President's Keeper, was published last year and alleged, among others, that the then President Jacob Zuma received a R1 million monthly salary from a benefactor for a couple of months after becoming president in 2009. Poe says that he cooperated fully with the Hawks officials.
I have expected this raid for some time, but I didn't expect the raid to take place in February 2018, especially after Cyril Ramaphosa became the president. I think it is extremely short-sighted of them to raid the private premises of a journalist. I don't know what they thought they were going to get. But anyway, as I say, they were just doing their job, but somewhere up in the police, some brigadier or some general decided that my premises should be raided. Before Ramaphosa became the president, there were various police investigations against me. I thought that this would all end after the rise of Ramaphosa. But we were informed, my attorney was informed about 2 weeks ago that there's still a case against me that's now being investigated by a police general in the Free State. And then these hawks arrived on my doorstep. So I'm not sure what is going on or how serious these investigations are.
Meanwhile, the South African Editors Forum has condemned the raiding of Poe's house by the Hawks. Speaking to SABC News, earlier, Mkokeli said the forum views this as an act of intimidation.
It is a shocking incident when you find a police official visiting a journalist at home and looking for documents. We see it as the abuse of resources and the police system to intimidate not only Jacques Poe but many other journalists who may now, following this incident, not confident enough to chase after stories about state corruption and to publish such. It is really a shocking development. It followed a few threats in the past to go after Jacques Poe by senior officials in government who wouldn't take kindly to him publishing what is in the public interest. And his book was very explosive in revealing the serious allegations about alleged corruption by then President Jacob Zuma and other senior officials in the state. Jacques Poe now says the complainant in the matter is the DG in the intelligence department, and Asha Fraser. Asha Fraser is mentioned in the book in a manner that is not flattering. So you can see the state coming out to abuse the state itself to intimidate Jacques Poe and many other journalists by extension.
Well, have you as SANAF actually been able to speak to Jacques with regards to the incident, around the details and essentially what happened? Any details as to what they were looking for, perhaps?
We don't know exactly. I mean, as Jacques says, it's really short-sighted to think you're going to find documents kept at home. And most importantly for us, I mean, we've heard in the past how they've articulated what the real issue is. They're saying he has revealed confidential information. I don't see how that is a crime. I mean, the basic duty of a journalist is to bring out information that is in the public interest and push that information, and sometimes quite forcefully, into the public domain. So kudos to him. He did a great job, and that is definitely not a crime. What they may want to argue is that the information he has is information that should not be handled by an outsider, somebody who is outside of the intelligence system, and they should be looking within the system itself and leave a journalist to carry on do the job he's supposed to do. He's done a wonderful job, and many other journalists have come out with great stories that have helped South Africans make informed decisions and better contributions to the debate about state capture and the political leadership in South Africa in the past 2 years or so.
Now, reports circulating around the story allude to that it could be a possible form of intimidation. Your views on that?
It absolutely, I mean, it serves exactly to do that. It tries to shut Jacques Pau up, but it shuts up many other people who potentially have great stories to publish, whether in different forms. It could be TV, online, could be multimedia, social media, even in book forms. This is what it does. It really just tries to strike a blow at the media industry, and not just the media industry itself. It's about intimidating the people who inform journalists. It's about depriving the public the basic right to know, which is enshrined in the Constitution. So it does a great deal of disservice to the South African, and it messes up the constitutional dispensation it's supposed to truly enjoy.
Now, you've obviously mentioned the issue that this then has against individuals, journalists, as well as the media and the freedom in which we can express as a whole. Essentially, what is SANEF planning to do going forward? Is there any action that SANEF does want to press going forward?
Look, we'll see. There are many ways that we can respond to this, and one is to work with Jacques Pau and his attorneys and give them support in whatever support he may need. At the same time, we're trying to have a meeting with the new police minister, Mr. Gupta, to have a conversation about this, and really is an attempt to get him to look quite critically at the role of the Hawks and them. And they're supposed to be investigating the kind of crimes that Jacques Pau's book it talks about, and leave Jacques Pau to enjoy himself as a journalist to help our society. That is ultimately what we want. But we would also want to have a conversation with the IPID, the police watchdog, as to get them to have an interest in this matter, so that our state apparatus, including the police, are not abused by people who are protecting the interests of private individuals and the interests of corrupt politicians. We want to see South Africans enjoying their freedom. We want to see the state being freed from this terrible grip of the kind of political leaders we've had in our recent past, so that they can truly go back to the basic job of serving South Africans.
Well, the Hawks raid on Jacques Pau's home in the Western Cape yesterday has revived old concerns regarding the roles of authorities in dealing with whistleblowers. Speaking to SABC News, Sam Sol from the Amabugane Centre for Investigative Journalism says Pau was targeted because he exposed the abuse of power and resources at the State Security Agency.
I think Jacques Pau also expressed that, he said he was expecting something like this just after the book was published, but not now, just after President Cyril Ramaphosa has been elected. And but I think it shows, the empire strikes back, and the empire is not dead. And the concerns that we have around the kind of the state security network that the former President Zuma built up, it's there, and there's serious concerns about what it does. He's being targeted because of reporting he did in his book on the State Security Agency. And anybody who's read The President's Keepers will be in no doubt that the information that he revealed about the State Security Agency was in the public interest. He reveals allegations of very serious abuses of power, abuses of resources at the State Security Agency. Yeah. And it's been a problem that we've been fighting in terms of security legislation, that there's not a public interest clause protecting journalists and other whistleblowers in terms of exposing secrets, or what the state might consider secrets, in the public interest. Yeah. The secrecy bill, the Secrecy Act that was passed, we had a long fight as R2K and Amabugane to get such a protection for whistleblowers and journalists acting in the public interest. That was rejected. That law has never been signed into law because we think it's still unconstitutional. And one of the reasons it's unconstitutional is that there is not that safeguard for whistleblowers and journalists.
The sixth suspect is expected to appear in the Ngcobo Magistrate Court for the police station attack. It is believed that this suspect is one of the main members of the Ngcobo Church. Well, the suspect was arrested yesterday after pointing out a hidden firearm. 4 other suspects appeared on Monday and another on Tuesday. The latest arrest is after the suspect was taken in for questioning. He later led the police to the Mangoba Seven Angels Ministries church premises at Nyanga village, where he allegedly pointed out a pistol inside a pit toilet. Well, new police minister Bheki Cele has defended his tough talk on crime fighting. He spoke with SABC News earlier. This follows the Ngobo police massacre that has made headlines since it broke 2 weeks ago.
It's the third time I'm asked this question today alone. And I've raised this thing time and again. I'm raising it again. Somebody must show me where I've said that thing, either electronically or in the print media. That statement was never said. Yes, I have spoken tough, and I'll continue to speak tough. I've said, including at the funeral memorial service where I was speaking a few days back at Ngobo, to say, police cannot die with the guns in their hands. They must defend themselves and defend the communities that they're working with. Secondly, do that within the law. South Africa is a constitutional country. It's got laws. Go and read very well. Section 49 of the Criminal Procedure Act directs how the police must work. We'll stick to the law. We will be tough when we deal with the brutal, those criminals that kill police and kill the communities, but we'll understand that not everybody is that such of a criminal in South Africa, and we act within the law, working within what has been recommended by the National Development Plan, by CRL Commission going forward, and make sure that South Africans are safe. Is a country with human rights, and we must deal with that within the law and the Constitution of South Africa.
When asked about safety and security, the minister requested the public to give him time, and eventually the country will be safer.
Our job is to make sure that criminals are not having an upper hand when it comes to the community. The community must feel having an upper hand. But the question answered, we need to work with the police, work with everybody that wants to make a contribution. How can we deal with the crime is invited and is heavily accepted and welcome to make the inputs that will work together, making sure that South Africa are safe. But it must be South Africans themselves who feel safe and must say so. There are things to be done to work towards that, and is exactly what we'll be doing as a South African police and the communities of South Africa.
On our question of the day today, we're asking you, of course, we're focusing on the Hawks raid on the house of investigative journalist Jacques Poe, and what your views are on that in the raiding of the residence. We'll have a look at some of your tweets when we come back after the short break.
The Western Cape needs national government to fulfill its mandate on ensuring a bulk water supply.
We must ensure that the city of Cape Town never confronts this particular situation again.
The ESCOM is serious about stamping out corruption, which is why the market is now beginning to accommodate us.
Looking at neighboring countries, expecting Botswana just to see partly cloudy skies with a high of 34 in Gaborone.
News today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Technology is used for both positive and negative.
Some governments block the internet in times of protest.
With this internet blackout, it's impossible for me to do it, so I have to travel to Douala.
This act is a true violation of the rights of citizens.
In Africa, people are always coming up with innovative ways to use technology to solve some of their problems.
The more interesting piece of technology is actually the artificial intelligence.
AI, it's utilizing data to make your life easier.
Our network will give you Africa's technology and social media news.
For all your technology news, join Siphumelele Zondi every Saturday at 17:30.
Welcome back. With the home of investigative journalist and author Jacques Pauw's home in Riebeek Kasteel in the Swartland in the Western Cape province was raided by the Hawks yesterday. Today our question we're asking you is, what do you actually make of the raid that took place on his private residence? So let's have a look at some of the tweets that have been coming in, of course, this morning. Nkonzo says the Hawks raided Jacques Pauw. They should investigate Batabile Ace Makashule. Please, Hawks, do it and do not waste time now. This one coming in from Lindo saying, I believe if Jacques Pauw is believed to have broken the law, he must have his time in court. No one is above the law. And Shubele Jessa says, do they really think he will have the so-called classified information in his house, let alone the country? When are they going after Zuma? There's our poll question. Should the bearing of the old apartheid flag be criminalized? With over 300 votes coming in, 83% of you are saying yes, it should be criminalized if people still have that old flag. Let's have a look at some of the tweets that are coming through. Well, this one comes in from Kinks and Curls. We should also change the anthem into only Nkosi Sikalele hymn. It doesn't make sense that we find one symbol of the apartheid offensive, but we keep the others, which is the stem, unchallenged, as if it was written to be a rally cry to the Afrikaner nationalism. It has no place in the new South Africa. Oshibele Jessa says it should be criminalized, period. Last one coming in from Edward, saying in this instance, I would say that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission did not do its job. It was supposed to be about reconciliation. So if you're insulted by the old flag, you really are weak, because it's just a flag without a mouth to insult you. So I'm asking more, does one have to use or love these things in the presence? Thank you very much for participating in both our poll and our question here on SABC Newsroom. You can continue to do so on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. We'll have a look at your comments behind the numbers there, as well as your views behind some of the polls there on many of the trending topics. Staying with trending topics, let's move online to our Facebook page. The National Union of Mine Workers says workers of the Gupta-linked Optimum coal mine in Mpumalanga will not return to work until all workers have been paid their salaries. And then the National Prosecuting Authority is today expected to oppose Atul Gupta's application in the Bloemfontein High Court to challenge the freezing of 10 million rand from his personal bank account. And staying with the NPA, a former NPA head, Xolisi Nkosana, has expressed his willingness to return to his position at the NPA. Very interesting views. They're also coming in from SABC reporter Alvin Sampe. You can go look on his Twitter page. Continue to follow us on Facebook and interact with us. On our newspapers this morning here in the continent, we'll start off in Zimbabwe, where the Herald reports that President Mnangagwa rescued a Zimbabwean woman and her 3 children who were stranded in the Democratic Republic of Congo for the past 3 years, finally flying them back home on a presidential plane. The Swaziland Observer reports that water levels at Lubovane and Hawane dams are at full capacity following the heavy rains from last week throughout the weekend. And finally, up north in Nigeria, the Daily Trust says that the federal and state governments have a 3-year combined budget of 44 trillion nairas, but only 1.8 trillion nairas or 4.2% has voted for health. Well, the controversial Seven Angels ministry in Ngobo is expected to feature prominently when the CRL briefing commences. Let's cross their line.
Will be addressing all of us this morning. Thank you so much. Well, thank you very much, CEO, Chair. Over to you.
Okay. Thanks a lot, and thanks for coming. We have asked you to come today so that we can bring clarity into the whole issue around our report. A lot of you were part of us launching the report. Some of you were part of us during the investigations, and some of you were in Port Elizabeth when we met the Seven Angels. And what we wanted to do was to tell you where we are with the report, what we want to do with the report, what the COCTA Portfolio Committee has said about the report, and what do we think is the way forward in terms of how we take the whole issue forward. So we thought maybe let's start with the easiest part in terms of our constitutional mandate. I understand our communications people have given you the parts that we'll be referring to in the Constitution, and they've also given you the CRL Rights Act in your packages for ease of reference. We have always based these issues on the Constitution. If you look at Section 1812, it's there in your packages. If you look at the one that says Chapter 9 in terms of state institutions supporting constitutional democracy, what is our responsibility and expectations. Section 2, for instance, will talk to who are subject only to the Constitution and the law, and that we must be impartial and we must do our work without fear, favor or prejudice. And Section 3 will refer to issues like all organs of state must take all legislative and other measures to assist us in terms of ensuring our independence, ensuring our impartiality, ensuring our dignity, which we think is very important, and the effectiveness of the CRL Commission in this particular situation. And that we report and we're accountable to the National Assembly, and that we need to report there at least once a year. That's what the Constitution says about who we are and what we're supposed to be doing. We'll say as we move along why we're referring to this. And then as far as the CRL Rights Act, which I think all of you have, if you can look at Section 5, for instance, 1 and E, it outlines exactly what it is supposed to be happening here. You all have the are there. If you can check 5.1E, we're allowing you to read at your leisure so that you understand, and when you write, you can be we're talking about, investigate and research any issue concerning any matter affecting cultural, religious, and linguistic communities. We're there to report on any issue concerning the rights religious and linguistic communities, which in this instance we've done. We've reported on it. And if you go down, say we must receive, we must send the appropriate of state regulation, on rights to communities, and we have made decisions to that effect. And if you move on to I, it will tell you where J, K, as we must bring any relevant matter to the attention of the appropriate authority or organ of
the CRL live press briefing, break in transmission. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue.
We take an in-depth look of all your stories of the day across the world. Stay tuned to Primetime News every day from 18 hours. News at 9. We go beyond the headlines of the day's breaking news to bring you all the angles and in-depth analysis of stories. We go beyond the surface, including on how it will impact your life. Join us every day at 9 to zoom in on the day's big stories.
Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa undertakes his first official foreign assignment with a three-nation tour in the SADC region. SA's top diplomat believes that South Africa's relationship with Russia will continue to be based on mutual self-interest even under the president's new rule. Having a look at your lead story this half hour, President Cyril Ramaphosa will undertake his first official foreign assignment on Friday when he visits 3 countries in the SADC region. The three-nation tour will include Angola, Namibia and Botswana. The first stop for President Ramaphosa on his official visit will be Angola. Angola is the current chair of the Organ on Defence, Peace and Security Troika. South Africa, on its part, is chairing the regional body SADC. He will hold talks with President João Lourenço, who's also been a few months in the office after the stepping down of the longtime leader Eduardo dos Santos. On the very same day, he will then travel to Namibia, which is the incoming chair of SADC. President Ramaphosa will conclude his trip by visiting Botswana. The president will also use the opportunity to bid farewell to President Ian Khama, who's vacating office in March after 2 terms in office. Well, the controversial Seven Angels ministry in Ingobo is expected to feature prominently. Let's cross over to the CRL media briefing live.
What this report is all about, what we've gone through, what we've discovered, where the red flags are, and where we think there could be problems. Part of what we red flagged that day was that the issue of the 7 angels, we knew even at that point that something horrible would happen there. if nothing was done to monitor them or fast-track legislation where their peers could look into that thing and tell us whether that's a church or a cult or whatever was happening there. We knew something was happening in Ngobo there, and we had no powers to deal with it. We could only rely on the legislation being fast-tracked to enable other religious leaders to go in there and say, okay, this is normal, no, this is very much out of the ordinary. We need to disable these people from doing what they were doing. Part of what we're very much alarmed with was that people were selling their worldly goods, cashing in their pensions, emptying their bank accounts, taking their cars and everything that they owned, taking their children to go live there in the church. And when we met with these people, the angels, they clearly told us that they don't believe in education. No one should go to school. No one should work. They must sit here and wait for something to happen. We knew even at that point that the money will eventually run dry. And when the money runs dry, we knew there was going to be a problem. And that problem will be of insurmountable levels where we'll all be shocked. And we raised this, that there were an accident waiting to happen. There are a time bomb. There are a situation where you know when it explodes, it's going to explode a lot. Some of the journalists who are here were here when we launched our report, and we raised these issues even with the journalists, that the Ngobo situation is very dangerous. And we then, after that, can you go back? After that, we looked at, because there were always doubts, we knew the people who were championing this thing of rights of religious leaders, that they were querying the constitutionality of regulating practitioners, not the religion. We never ever proposed that the religion must be regulated. We said everyone who has a profession or a trade or a career is free to choose any of those as per the Constitution. But the Constitution further says, however, they may be regulated. And all we've ever said was that there must be a regulatory framework that will stop places like Ngobo from happening, where peers will say, this is a cult, it's not a church, shut it down. Disable the angels or the pastors and say to them, no, you can't continue like this. We are no longer one of us. Shut this thing down, let's go home. Professor Gupta was one of the experts we used in terms of, as a constitutional expert. I'm sure some of you know him. He presented a paper to Parliament on the 27th of June 2017, outlining the constitutionality of what we're putting on the table, so that it's not us saying this thing is constitutional. We allowed a constitutional expert to guide and to say, yes, we've looked and interrogated this thing, we've looked at the Constitution, we've looked at their recommendations. They are within the Constitution and the law. They are not violating any of those. There were a number of religious organizations that we took with to Parliament, including the ZCC, which is the biggest church in this country. And we took a lot of other formations with us to Parliament, which are umbrella organizations that said, yes, although it's uncomfortable, but something needs to be done, including the Rhema Church, who were saying, although it would be uncomfortable to go through this, But they're in support that something needs to happen, some regulatory framework must be put in place, because they were also aware that this is getting out of hand. So we had a very tight group of umbrella organizations that we went to Parliament with, who were physically in Parliament. The gospel musicians were there. Utebuko is here today to say they're in support of this thing. We need to have a framework that is going to monitor this sector to make sure that, like all other sectors, whether you're a doctor or a nurse or any profession, actually, social workers, lawyers, etc., even judges themselves, they account somewhere. If there's something wrong that a judge has done, they're dealt with by their own. So we then said, with everything that we've put on the table, we feel, of course, the religious sector, some of them, for their own reasons, will want to punch holes at the proposals. That is expected. I don't think any of us went in blindly and thought that individual pastors, individuals, prophets, etc., will gladly accept this. We need to know as a nation that we've gone on for a long time without the sector being regulated. And we should be brave as a nation and say the time has come to protect the citizens of this country. Because we felt even at that stage that if nothing happens, this thing is spiraling out of control. Anyone can start a church anytime, anywhere, call themselves whatever they want to call themselves, a prophet, a pastor, a bishop, an archbishop, anything goes in this country, unlike in other African countries. And then we're waiting for Parliament to then tell us what is the next move. For us, that was the end of the road. We're done what we're supposed to do, and we walked away. And then they invited us to come to Parliament, the Cocteau Portfolio Committee, for a workshop on the 17th and 18th October. And they said to us, freedom of religion, South Africa, and other religious people have said they want to have their day in Parliament and tell parliamentarians how much they don't like this whole report and our recommendations. And we're supposed to present ourselves on that day to listen to them and to respond to them. We should note that people like Prophet Khatebe was there as well, and of course I'm sure it's known that we're in court with him. We've laid charges against him, and well, some such people were there. And we should also state that by that time, freedom of religion South Africa had taken us to court precisely because in one of the TV programs, Rights and Records, when we're debating with them there, we had said if we do nothing as they are proposing, that leave the system as it is and we will monitor ourselves. I clearly said if we do nothing, people are going to die. They have taken me to court on that, to say, I dared to say, people are going to die. It's in court papers, and if you need us to supply you with those court papers, we could. So we're currently being sued for saying, if we do nothing, people are going to die. So freedom of religion South Africa is in court. They are suing me in particular and the CRL Commission for daring to say people are going to die. In this instance, we prayed we were not right. We prayed we were wrong, and very wrong. But unfortunately, we were 100% right. We pointed where it was likely to happen, and it happened right there. And after this workshop where everybody was saying how much they dislike this whole thing that we want to do and how much it's going to affect their freedoms, then there was a meeting on 30th January 2018 where the COCTA Portfolio Committee was deliberating on their report about the hearings that they've held in Parliament about our report and our recommendations. So on 30 January, we were also invited to come to Parliament to deliberate. Now, they were deliberating and were observers on how they're going to deal with our report. They had a draft thing at the time. And then on 14 February, the COCTA Portfolio Committee adopted the report. You'll see in the report that they've given us, that has been included in your pack. We then received the final report from the COCTA Portfolio Committee on 21 February 2018, the day of the Ngobo massacre at the police station. We received their final report. I don't know, these things sometimes are scary coincidence. And maybe we should tell you what we did, because there have been a lot of media reports in terms of what did you do, who did what, who didn't do what, with the Ngobo situation. When you discovered this bomb ticking, what then did you do? While we're investigating, you know, the whole issue of commercialization of religion and the abuse of people's belief systems, there was a report in the media about a particular church in the Eastern Cape. I think it was an SABC, and we decided, okay, let's go and talk to these people and find out what is happening there. We had a very long session with them because we're trying to get to the bottom of this. We've posted the full interview with them. It's on our website, but there are clips which you can see later on about the conversation we're having with them, which was a very strange conversation that we're having. From what they told us, it became clear that what they were preaching was a form of extremism. We thought they were extremists of one kind or another. Our report, if you look at our report on page 21, we highlighted them. We even quoted them verbatim in terms of what they were saying. That from heaven, they were sent here by God, and their angels, and their Jesus' brothers, and all 7 of them choose who their mother will be and who their father will be, and they're here to catch the devil and take him back to hell. And all these people who are there waiting for their brother Jesus to come, and they're all going to go to heaven. At that point, like situation. They explained that people bring their worldly goods. Some of the people, the congregants were there, and they were telling us they willingly gave their worldly possessions. They've sold their houses. Some of them were professionals, teachers, nurses, etc., who have gone to live there in the church and have cashed in everything that they had. When you hear that, you know at some point money is going to run dry here, and when money runs dry, it's going to be problematic. We then, at that point, started saying there's something wrong here. The whole interaction made anybody wonder, what do you call such a thing in the country? We then, during that time, saw that the Eastern Cape Provincial Department of Social Development, they were removing children from the ministry. And we're very happy about this. We even issued a press statement on 17 February 2016, saying we're very happy, we're congratulating the Eastern Cape Department of Social Development for dealing with this church, for removing these children, because children are their business. And in our assessment of the situation, their major violation, if not the only violation at the time, was that children were being kept there. It was unconstitutional that children cannot attend school, that they cannot access the health systems. Some of them did not even have birth certificates because they didn't believe in those types of things, and that these children could not even be immunized because they were praying for them, so they couldn't immunize them. And they didn't need any immunization because they've got higher powers. So we're very happy when the Eastern Cape Department of Social Development were acting on this issue. It was only a week or so ago when we heard that they're saying we stopped them from doing their work. When we're so appalled, how could we stop them from removing children? And we had issued a press release, which I'm sure you can find in your files there, when we're saying we're very happy with what they're doing and they should keep up and make sure that this thing, at least children are protected, if nothing else. The reality of the situation is a lot of people, including the chairperson of the COCTA Portfolio Committee, in the past week have said there are enough laws to deal with such things in the country. We've looked at this thing. We've spoken to the police. We've spoken to the prosecutors. When adults who are of sane mind give up all their worldly goods and they go and live in a church, there are no laws that people are breaking. You can't arrest people for praying the whole day and singing the whole day. It is not illegal. What they were doing there was singing and praying and dancing and doing all sorts of things that are things that in a church you do, but they may have been hiked up by 100%. But you can't arrest them. When people say there are enough laws to deal with these things, which laws were supposed to apply in Ngcobo at that particular time, before they went to the police station to kill the police? Which laws had they violated in the current arsenal of legislation? Once we start arresting people for being in a church, we will get into trouble in this country. That will be a complete violation of their freedom of religion that they say they want to protect. You can't say, why are you singing here the whole day and not going to work? It's not illegal to do that. So at that point, no one was breaking any laws. We checked and verified and looked at all angles, everything checked out. People were there voluntarily. Actually, they brought them to us to say, we like being there, we like giving all our money to the church. It's only when you have a peer review mechanism that will then say to the 7 angels, what show are you running here? Is this a church? Is this not a church? A legislated peer review mechanism would have been able to deal with them, because they would have been empowered to declare them not religious leaders anymore. And if you can license someone, you can take away the license. Their peers would have been able to say, you can't be one of us anymore if you claim all these unusual things. So while withdrawing your license, you can't run a church anymore. That's when the system would have collapsed for the angels. But in the absence of any peer review mechanism, nobody could touch them. Today, if they are not arrested, and the other 4 angels are still alive, if that space is demolished, they can move to another space and do the same thing again. And that's what appalls us at this point. That next week they might find a new space. And there's no law that stops them from doing that. We can all monitor and hope and pray that it's not going to be duplicated somewhere else. And we know that's not their first space. They've been somewhere else before, and they were removed there in another village, and they kept moving. They were there at that point. What's going to stop them in the current legislation for the 4 who are left to go and open up somewhere else? Nothing. Twice we held meetings with the traditional leaders, the religious leaders, and members of the community in Nyanga, then Ngobo, to sensitize them about what is happening in their area and what they are doing about it. Commissioner Madiba, one of our commissioners whom you can talk to later, facilitated those meetings in the community to say there's a problem here, what is the traditional leader doing about it, because it's happening in his constituency. So we didn't just sit, we mobilized the people to say, what can you do as a traditional leader? Can't you shut down this church and say, this is your space, you don't want them to be in your space? So we did a variety of things to try and deal with them in the absence of any law that could deal with them. We warn people that this will happen. Even the people in that place know that. One of the things we want to say is that what we're hearing is there are many others like this in the country. What we would ask the media to do is to ask people to call us here at the CRL. We'll give you our landline numbers. Those that do not have the internet, to email to us at info@crlcommission.org.za to tell us about other formations like this that need to be monitored, that need to be dealt with within the law. And how we can do that is limited at this stage, but at least to make South Africa aware of what is happening out there and what might happen out there. We have put into your package the report we received from COCTA, Portfolio Committee, which we received on the 21st of February this year. They have a few observations, it's in the report, that we did not do sufficient public participation as only 85 religious organizations were invited to the hearings. What we did was to look for umbrella denominations. If you call the ZCC, they represent at least 12 million people in this country. If you call the Methodist Church, they represent millions. Anglican Church, you've got another millions. So we're not dealing with individual churches. We're dealing with bigger formations. But also this is a scientific thing. If 85 is small, you know, it's like, how long is a piece of string? What is medium, what is big? We're looking at how the representation. How many people do you represent? If you represent 12 million, we've covered a quarter of the population or a third of the population. If you represent 4 million, so it can be that only 85 religious organizations. We're not dealing with individuals and individual churches. We're dealing with big churches. Then there's the issue of the constitutionality of the CRL Rights Commission recommendations. They are saying there's disagreement over that. What we know is that we've consulted experts in the Constitution, and they've interrogated our recommendations, and they found that they are within. Well, if somebody else says they're not within, then it explains why we want to take the steps that we want to explain to you. And part of what they observed was that the religion should not be commercialized, which we agree with totally. And they also observed that denominations have been self-regulated, and this has been working well for them. We agree with that. A lot of traditional churches, missionary churches, are structured in the way that we are proposing. We're saying everyone must be accountable somewhere. I can't start up my church as a standalone and be accounted only to myself. If you go to the Anglican Church, they've got a system, a hierarchical system. They train you, they deploy you, they monitor you, and if you're out of order, they get rid of you. And that's all that we're asking for, is that people mustn't be standalones. You can't control me, who has opened up my church with my money when I belong to no one. So if other peers are calling me without there being legislated peer review accountability, I'll refuse to go to them. And what's the worst thing they can do to me? Absolutely nothing. So the craziness will continue unabated, and we'll find ourselves where we are right now. So it's okay to say denominations have been doing it. Yes, that's where we learned how to do this thing. We copied their system and said, it works for the Anglicans, it works for the Dutch Reformed Church, it works for all the other bigger churches. How do we make it work for individual churches, standalones? And we recommended the same methodology, that they should be part of an umbrella organization, and the umbrella organization of their choice. They will be responsible for monitoring them, they will be responsible for training them, they will be responsible for saying, you're no longer fit to be one of us. So leave this thing. We've been begging you, we've prayed, we've fasted, we've done everything for you. You can't change. So we give up on you. I'm sure they would have given up on the 7 angels if they had insisted to be angels from heaven. At some point, the umbrella organization would have stopped them. In the absence of an umbrella organization that is legislated, that will force them to be part of one umbrella organization.
Just coming out of the CRL media briefing, just for a breakaway to have a look at your headlines this hour. Well, 20 Gupta-linked companies launch an urgent court application to prevent the Bank of Baroda from shutting its South African operations. Well, a 6th suspect in the tragic Gobo police station attack is expected in court this morning. Those are just a brief overview of your headlines this hour. The CRL has been expressing concern over church practices as it briefs the media on the latest regarding the 7 Angels ministry. Let's cross back live.
Text correctly. If they are saying this holy water will cure you of your whatever chronic illness, well, they are not saying anything that they say that they can't back up in the holy book. They'll say, God is healing. I've prayed for this water and I've transferred the powers to the water. So when you commercialize, it's a very difficult thing that can only be dealt with by your peers, who will then guide you whether you've gone beyond the Bible or you are within the Bible and within the doctrine. They say the CRL Commission is not the body that should be regulating the sector. We agree with them totally. We have no appetite for this. That's why we're saying their peers must deal with them. You can't be dealing with all religions. It's Muslims today, they're coming with the problem, it's Jewish people, it's all sorts of other people. Let them have their own peer review mechanism. Let them belong to their own umbrella organizations of their choice based on the way they worship. People from missionary churches do not work the same as charismatic churches, so they can't be in one umbrella. You need people who will understand their form of worship and a way, of doing things. So we agree with the fact that the CRL Rights Commission cannot be the people who determine such things. And we've said it in Parliament that there are many options. The peer review mechanism can be administratively located at the CRL Commission, or it can be a standalone like the lawyers have, the doctors have, and other people, and it can be established as a standalone, and it can be funded accordingly, and it can have its own systems. But that the issue of regulation is at the core. Otherwise, you have nice people who pray and hope that you'll change your ways. There needs to be a carrot and a stick situation where your peers can say you are totally out of order and we don't want to be associated with you ever again. It happens with lawyers, it happens with doctors, it happens with every other professional. What is so special about these professionals that they can be monitored from heaven? They are here now. When we get there, we'll all be judged. They'll be judged together with us. We understand from the Holy Book. We'll form a line there, and all our sins will be there. So while they're here, they must be dealt with the way we deal with other professionals here in the country. And there can't be a special offer and then say we don't want to be regulated, we want to regulate ourselves without the law coming into the discourse. We're saying they'll regulate themselves. I don't know how we can ever stress this more. Let them regulate themselves. They don't need to be located here. There'll be a burden on the CRL Commission that is already underfunded. So if they can be located in another place, in another space, but the issue of regulation, for us, we feel it's constitutional, and we feel in our mandate to protect the rights of religious communities, which is a constitutional mandate. We cannot back down. We need the rights of those people protected. And the circus has gone on long enough. We cannot waste time. We cannot find things that are nebulous and hold on to them and excuse them through the back door in terms of what they're doing. They're saying we should hold, part of their recommendations, a national consultative conference should be convened to give a platform to discuss challenges in the religious sector. We're saying we all know what those challenges are. I'm sure half the nation can write a whole book. I'm sure most journalists can write a book about what is the problem with especially Christianity. We all know what is happening. You don't need a conference to do that. You can list it. We already know. They're saying arising from that NCC, National Consultative Conference, the following should be established. There must be a charter of self-regulation and a code of conduct. We're saying that's all well and good, but self-regulation cannot be outside the law. There must be a legal framework that governs self-regulation. And self-regulation will go hand in hand with a code of conduct like lawyers have, doctors have, and everybody else has. So it's not a new thing that we're saying there must be a code of conduct. We've already started working on the code of conduct a long time ago. So we're saying a charter without a legal framework that empowers their peers to get rid of people who are not fit for this work is critical, and it's at the core of protecting the rights of religious communities. They want to strengthen the mandate of ICASA and other such bodies to penalize misleading media claims. We agree with them totally. We've spoken to ICASA in terms of what can be done about people advertising in the newspapers, traditional leaders who promise you millions that will be brought into your house by a rat, and all sorts of togoloshe and short men who will bring you 6 million rands to your house. We all know that that won't happen, but it's in the newspapers every day. We're saying also when people say that they will, in their churches, most of the time, there are those people who say, you know, I bought this bottle of water, I was suffering from HIV and AIDS, and I'm now healed. How do you deal with what happens in a church? When people are advertising, the bulk of advertising happens in a church, and people then buy and buy and buy because somebody somewhere has said, I bought this and I was healed. So there's a lot of advertising one way or the other that happens. So we agree that something should happen, that there should be a strengthening of legislation like the Non-Profit Organization Act and the Income Tax Act to ensure registration of religious institutions. And we're saying to ensure taxation, proper taxation of religious institutions and religious practitioners. We have been talking to SARS about it, and SARS have started with their project of looking at how to tax the religious sector appropriately. We are also saying that the issue of the Non-Profit Act, NPO Act, we are saying it's not about the church. The problem is not the church, the building. The problem, it's the individuals in the church. If the Seven Angels Ministry were to register with the NPO Act, they might be registered as we speak. How does that help? Because all the NPO Act does is that, okay, you must tell us who your board members are, where you are, and what business are you in. They can register, but how will that protect people? It's the individuals. How do you get to the seven angels to tell you their story of being from heaven and all sorts of other things? The peers must deal with the individuals, not with the building called a church. There's nothing wrong with the building in Nengob and where they are, and their board members whom they can pick and choose. There's something wrong with the seven angels. We say this is a God-sent example, because now we can give you concrete examples of why these things can't work until you get to the practitioner and you can interrogate the person himself. How do you know that people do not have a record of child abuse, child sexual abuse? There's a register. Who checks them? Who says, you appear here? I could be out of jail today for having raped children and women and could start a church tomorrow. Nothing stops me. Even if you implement all those things, NPO Act, tax, the pedophiles will still roam the church. What have we decided? We feel this is at the core of what we wanted to discuss with you today. There has been a whole range of discussions and debates where people have been quoted saying we can't go to the Constitutional Court because we are appointed by Parliament and we report to Parliament. And there have been reports that we want to take Parliament to court. We want to clarify that. We are going to go to the Constitutional Court on a declaratory order. What do we want them to help us with? We have made recommendations. At the core of those recommendations is the fact that the practitioners, not the religion, must be regulated. We must know which pastor, which reverend, which bishop is where. As a nation, we should be able to go to some website, go in and say, this is Pastor Togom Kwanas Kaluva. Who is she? Where is she coming from? What is her business? And we should have access to that information. We need the individuals, not the church. We want to gun for the individual. So that's at the core of what we're saying, and that the peers must drive this thing. Senior people in that particular religion must be responsible for that process. And they say they're doubting. The portfolio committee says they doubt the constitutionality of our recommendations. Hence, they are not looking at our recommendations. What we know for sure is that the final arbiters on whether we are constitutional or not is the Constitutional Court. So we want to go there for a declaratory order for the judges there to say to us, yes, what we are recommending is in violation of freedom of religion. And then we'll all say, okay, so what's the next step now, CRL? If they say, no, you're not in violation of any freedom in the Constitution, because freedoms have limitations, as we all know, then we'll say to Parliament, so what now? And we can't say that without that declaratory order. So we're not taking Parliament to court, we're taking our recommendations to court for the Constitutional Court judges to declare our recommendations constitutional or unconstitutional. And we need to look at the constitutionality of the process followed by all parties involved, especially the CRL Commission and other parties. If we're involved in investigations and we're told that 85 is not enough, that's a procedural issue, whereas the CRL Commission, our Act says we must determine the methods we use. So we need them to say to us, yeah, you know, you didn't follow procedure properly, you violated the Constitution, you violated your Act, and that can only be determined at that level. And that's all that we're asking them to do. Look at who has done what. This is what we did, and this is where we are now. Can you help us with what is correct and what is wrong? Because even as the CRL Commission, we do this business every day. That's what we're here for. We do investigations. Almost every day we receive a complaint. Late last year, we launched our report on initiation, which the Parliament is aware of. And we're saying we're using the same method in everything that we do. We've never been queried before. We did the same thing with Utwala, and we submitted our report. Nobody queried how many girls did you talk to, that number was too small, etc., etc. And we're also observing the issue of the initiation bill. And we believe that issues of initiation are a spiritual, religious experience, because before a child goes to initiation, there's a lot of spirituality involved. And in African religion, it is a religious experience. But the same act is on the table of the same portfolio committee. It's part of freedom of religion. And no one is querying why it's okay for African religion, freedom of religion, not to be respected. If we're not respecting the Christian one, well, it's the same method that has been used for the other ones. People who are traditional surgeons, traditional nurses are supposed to be registering, they're supposed to be monitored, they're supposed to be removed if they're not doing the right thing. So we feel religion is religion. Religion is not Christianity. Religion is everyone's religion. We're very much aware of the fact that the same Parliament has passed an act in 2007 saying traditional healers must register. Traditional healers must have a council that's going to monitor them. We use the same method. We looked at that act and we said, let's apply it even here. It's already passed by Parliament. It wasn't violating freedom of religion then. It's the same method, it's the same rights, it's African religion. And all we're saying is that for us, freedom of religion is a cut across whatever religion you belong to. There are no religions that are more equal than others. All religions are the same. The Constitution is very clear on that. And those other legislated situations are the same as far as we're concerned. And we're also going to be asking the Constitutional Court to look at the independence of the CRL Rights Commission, the effectiveness of our recommendations, because we can't sit here, make recommendations every day, and they are not effective. What is the situation with the recommendations that we make? Because even if we make recommendations to anyone, they are going to come back and say, we're not going to implement this thing of yours, and we are just merely recommending, and we don't need to take it seriously. So we need a declaratory order in terms of what are the powers of the CRL Rights Commission. And if the CRL Rights Commission has no powers, then we need to ask ourselves, why are we spending taxpayers' money on an institution that has no powers at all? That, their reports can be closed and you say it's final and then it's reopened and we have to go back and redo the whole thing again. It's taxpayers' money we're spending here. It's not a private institution. So we need clarity on what it is that we can do and what it is that we can't do. In a country like this one where, we're looking for funds everywhere, maybe this could be a saving. If this institution is meaningless and powerless, we should be the first people to say, then save the money. Do something else with the money, because this Chapter 9 institution has no powers whatsoever. So we're going there, we're not taking Parliament to court. We're saying the Constitutional Court must help us find answers. And that's the only place you find answers when people say, you are unconstitutional. You go there and they tell you, you are right, you are wrong. And you move on and go rework your recommendations so that we are within the Constitution. And that's all that we are saying at this point.
And you can take Parliament to court, doesn't matter.
Well, I think we all know that my 12-year-old child can take me to court, to the Constitutional Court. So that's another story for another day. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleagues. Thanks. Can I just get an indication from some of you who might be wanting to get clarity or have got further questions? Please raise your hands, and if I'm obstructed by the camera, I'd like to apologize. Raise your hand, mention your name and the organization you represent. I'm going to take 5 in this first round. Let me start from this side. Okay, any question here? I think there is a hand. Yeah, at the back. Yeah.
I don't want to ask my question now. It's Sunday newspaper, and they're probably going to be my only angle.
Okay, okay. Can I see there are 2 hands here? Okay.
Well, just coming there out of the CRL Rights Commission, of course, the chairperson, Toko Mkwanazi-Xaluva, was speaking there, giving the media a briefing as to the recent developments there. Let's cross over now live to the CEC outcome of COSATU. We cross live to those proceedings.
And we'll decide in the next COSATU 13 National Congress in September this year. We're going to convene a bilateral with the SACP in order to continue to discuss their position on state power, because it does pose new challenges to the traditional alliance led by the ANC. We shall also deal with the question of the reconfiguration of the strategic alliance with COSATU and the ANC around the minimum program of the Freedom Charter, as well as a short-term tactical alliance with a broader formation within the civil society. We need a strategic discussion about the politics of broader fronts and their impact on the alliance relations. The next Alliance Political Council meeting and the Alliance Summit need to take stock of what has happened and create an environment for the Alliance to rebuild in a manner that deepens the NDR. On the socio-economic, COSATU CEC demand a high impact and transformative intervention in the economy in order to deal with unemployment, inequality, and poverty. Government need to assert its central role in the economy by driving the financing and development from within. No economic recovery has ever happened under the austerity budgets. Many governments, when they are attempting an economic recovery, they put together stimulus packages. We reject privatization and demand a state-led industrial strategy and the provision of affordable finance through a state bank. We need state facilities that will provide finance to the poor and the small business at very low rates in order to create the much-needed employment. We demand a shift in the microeconomic framework in line with the resolution of NASREC conference, or else the important policy advances from there will not see the light of the day. We plan to wage a battle to change this microeconomic framework, including the implementation of the proposed intervention, such as job creation schemes, green economic projects, support for cooperatives, skill development, and etc. We demand that the ANC engineer policy shift that will radically increase the incomes of workers and the poor, because the current economic tragedy has created the need for social grants and continues to reproduce them. The national minimum wage should allow us to deal with the current low-wage regime that produced the phenomenon of working poor and deprives many of our people of the basic level of dignity. The recomposition of the present team at the cabinet level should be followed by the deployment of heterodox economics to the Minister of Finance and other strategic economic department so that they can implement activist and distributive fiscal and financial policies and moderate the National Treasury and Reserve Bank orthodoxy. We demand that all our policy intervention should be geared at supporting local production instead of fueling the purchases of imported goods. We need to see an increased consumption that is based on rising income rather than credit. We demand a reasonable ambition programs of growth acceleration by investing in infrastructure, transport, and energy. We need to ensure that all our policy interventions are geared at supporting local production instead of fueling the purchase of important durable goods. This should be complemented by a new mandate for the Reserve Bank, a state bank, a state mining company, and the expropriation of land without compensation and other policy proposals coming out of the NASREC conference. Government needs to take on the markets by implementing effective taxes on capital flows and by also introducing more effective implementation of labor laws to protect the workers' right. On the VAT increase, COSATU rejects the proposed increase of the value-added tax by 1 percentage point from 14% to 15%, an increase in the fuel levy by 22 cents per litre and the road accident fund by 30 cents per litre, effective from April 2018. This is a way of forcing workers to pay for the sins of others. We call on the National Parliament to either reject VAT increase or expand the bucket for zero-rated goods. We demand all food items, including water and electricity, to be zero-rated. We have made our submission to Parliament on the budget yesterday, and if we do not get any positive results, or positive response will mobilize workers for a strike against the VAT increase. On the Competition Amendment Bill, we support the Competition Amendment Bill, especially its main objective of breaking down monopolies in the economy, which constitute a stumbling block towards economic development and creation of decent jobs. We're encouraging affiliates and wider public to comment and support this proposed law. On the universal health care in our lifetime, the year 2018 marks the first year of the second phase of the NHI implementation. We want the Department of Health that will not allow the implementation of the NHI to be delayed or nor sabotaged. So COSATU called for the following. 1, that the National Department of Health must adhere to the target set by the NHI White Paper. 2, we called for a midterm review of an NHI implementation plan to assess if the first phase targets were achieved. And 3, the establishment of the NHI implementation structures with labor represented in each committee. On rebuilding of the state-owned enterprise, COSATU views the state-owned enterprise as an important driver of radical economic transformation. These SOEs need to be cleaned up of corruption and should not be forced to compete with private sector companies in delivering services. We applaud government efforts to root out corruption element in the management of these enterprises. We demand firm action against those implicated in corruption both in the private sector and the public sector. SOEs and SARS needed to be cleaned up and all the guilty parties needed to be fired and prosecuted. We also demand that stakeholders' representation should be prioritized on the state-owned enterprise board, especially the worker representation. On bringing back the land, we salute the ANC for supporting the FF motion on land reform.
Well, as COSATU is briefing the media on the CEC outcome there on COSATU, let's have a look now at some other news stories that are making headlines at the half hour. Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa undertakes his first official foreign assignment with a 3-nation tour in the SADC region. SA top diplomat believes that South Africa's relationship with Russia will continue to be based on mutual self-interest even under the President Cyril Ramaphosa's rule. And of course, we take a short break. When we come back, all your sporting highlights with Marumo Kagana.
Fitting into your thin pants. Mowing the lawn without mowing the cable. When your washing machine gives you all your socks back.
With so many good deals at the Tops at Spa Surfest, you'll find any reason to celebrate. Buy a bottle of Russian Bear triple distilled vodka and 2 Power Play energy drinks for only $119.99. Only at the Tops at Spa Surfest.
Welcome back to SABC Newsroom. Well, all of your sporting highlights will come up, but just before quarter to the next hour. For now, though, let's cross back to that CEC outcome meeting on COSATU. We take the proceedings live.
Thank you for taking my question. It's Bonoro from the New Age. In his State of the Nation address, President Ramaphosa indicated that he would like to review the size of government departments, and he also mentioned that he intends on moderating the public sector wage bill. Now, if we call to mind what happened in Telkom, if we call to mind what happened in the post office, public sector restructuring exercises led to job losses. Now, against the background of the ongoing public sector wage negotiations, is COSATU concerned about what the implications of what the President has said, as well as the Finance Minister on the public sector wage bill, what implications do those have on workers in the public sector? And then secondly, there's a new Minister for Public Services and Administration. Does it now mean that the negotiations will now have to start from scratch, or do they take off from where they left off? Thank you.
Clement? Leo?
Yeah, I've also been covered.
Hero.
Silver Tegeta from the Star. You are saying, you know, you are not going to give the ANC blank check. Obviously, I understand that you were part and parcel of the organizations within the alliance that begged President Ramaphosa to ascend to the throne. But obviously, you are aware of the divisions within the party, and they've played themselves out even before he became the president. When you say you are not going to give him a blank check, and him and his team, and you have these expectations, including the cleaning up, I'm sure you would have seen during the cabinet reshuffle, and you said yourselves that you are not happy, even though you welcome some of the people who have been brought into the cabinet, but you are not happy that some of them, and you even mentioned some of them, including the former finance minister and that they have been left there. And the fact that he didn't win outright at Nazareth, surely has implications in terms of the decision-making that he has been. To what extent, when you say you're not going to do you think he can be able to implement the demands that you make as part of supporting him?
Your alliance partner, the SACP, finds itself having members of its leadership being appointed to cabinet posts. You don't see the same happening within COSATU. Is this not part of your strategy to make sure that you're in a position to actually influence public policy? Are you quite happy to be always left out of cabinet?
Thank you.
And just coming out of that CEC committee meeting and giving the updates there from COSATU. Let's cross out of that now and let's move over to the sporting desk. Marumoke Kana has more.
Greetings from the sports desk. As you'd know now, this coming Saturday, it's the Soweto Derby. And of course, all eyes will be fixed at the FNB Stadium. Earlier, I caught up with DJ Tira, who supports Kaizer Chiefs, and Nak Music, who support Orlando Pirates. And this is what they have to say. Greetings from the sports desk. Let's update your sports news. It's time for the Soweto Derby. And on Saturday, families, friends and colleagues will be divided as Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs go head-to-head at the FNB Stadium. And in the studio, we are joined by DJ Tira from Kaizer Chiefs and Nak Music from the mighty Buccaneers, as they are proud fans of both your respective teams. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Newsroom.
Thanks for having us. I'm glad you described it as mighty.
Yeah, no, look, those who've been around the field, I'm sure he wouldn't agree though when I call it mighty, but hey, I mean, they're the cheese boys of the PSL.
The glamour boys.
The glamour boys of Pefeni. Yeah, let's talk about it. I mean, many people have been saying, and critics have been saying, look, the derby hasn't really lived up to expectations in the recent days, where we experienced a lot of draws and lack of goals. Anga, Nak Music, tell me, do you think the Buccaneers will make it work this time around?
I think we will make it work. The boys are on a roll right now. We've been winning, you know. Coach got the coach of the month for January, you know, so he'll want to carry that on throughout the months. And I think just the general spirit in the camp is good. We're for winning. And I think leading up to this game, would want to prove a point to Chiefs. You know, they always give us a tough time, both on and off the pitch. So I think we'd want to return the favor this year.
For someone who's supposed to be giving you a hard time on and off the field, Tira seems to be a very chilled and laid-back guy. Are you confident in any way that your boys will make you proud come Saturday?
I'm so excited that my captain Kune will be available for the match. So I know that obviously we're safe there.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about his video clip singing. Eh?
No. Let's talk about what's happened in the field, not off the field. So, I think the team is in good spirits. They've been playing okay, yeah. And obviously, after the Pirates match, we're even gonna play better, you know, because playing Pirates just motivates us. You know, when you beat Pirates, you're like, I still got it.
But I know you guys are just not here to talk about football, but there's also an initiative that's close to your heart, mainly looking at the issue of abuse when it comes to women and children. Take us through that.
Yeah, man, together with the Culling Black Label, you know, the Champion Beer, and us as Champion Men, we've got the campaign called #NoExcuse. That obviously talks about that there is no excuse for us men to beat up women. You know, and we're totally opposed to that. I mean, we're trying to preach that so that we mustn't have fun at the stadium, drink and whatsoever, and when we get home and do something that are not, you know, proper. So no excuse against women. That's what we're preaching.
Nak Music, why is such an initiative close to your heart?
Well, it's for my particular situation is that I've got a huge women fan base. These are my supporters. I know just how amazing they are, you know. So I think I've got a responsibility to educate the men out there, and young and old, you know, that look up to myself and Tira, and to educate them that we need to unite and work together to minimize this thing and to can it as a whole, you know. So I think it's great that they've asked us to push this, and we're gonna go for it.
Tira, music, football, and beer, they all go together. Talk to us about the partnership between you guys supporting two different teams, and now beer, as you said earlier, people that are going to these football matches, they indulge and they have a good time. Talk to us further on that.
Well, man, we love music. But also we also play soccer ourselves, you know, and when there is music, there is soccer, and people are having a good time. But when we have a good time, we sometimes, you know, drink a little bit, and sometimes we might misbehave and do something that are not okay. So for us, we just pushing that positive message that, you know, there is no excuse for any wrongdoing. Let's enjoy soccer, let's enjoy music, let's enjoy beer, but let's do it all responsible and be grown-ups about it. So basically, that's just what we're doing, you know, and if everyone can actually, you know, just push the hashtag no excuse, because can you believe that 3 women are killed by their partners in South Africa every day?
And that's scary, because these are people that are supposed to be protecting you, close to you, and yet they're the people that turned villains and ended up hurting or even killing you. Talk to us about the song, Nak Music, that you guys will be putting out there for all the fans that will be at the stadium to enjoy.
Actually, 15 minutes before the kickoff, there will be a women's only choir that comes onto the pitch and sing the popular anthem Asambe Nono, you know, and that's just also to get them to have a voice and to sing and to get the crowd to interact as well, you know. And we're hoping that just brings the spirit, and that gets the men as well interacting with the women and cheering on this initiative that we have.
How important is it, gents, that we take such initiatives to our local drinking spaces where you're able to interact with these people at that level, and in order to at least instill that belief that, look, you're still a man, you don't have to prove it by beating up a woman or a child at that matter.
It's very important, because, I mean, that's where all this conversation, you know, starts. You know, you're chilling there with your boys, you're having a few drinks. Then if the conversation is all about women at that thing, then you're gonna get home and act like that. So it's important, even if we're chilling and just, you know, having a drink, that say, guys, you know what, let's look after women, you know, let's look after our sisters, and make sure that even when you get home, you preach the same thing and be good example. I mean, I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm a role model to many young people, and that's just what I want to say no excuse, no excuse.
Like music, it's okay for your partner to support Kaizer Chiefs. And it's okay for Kaizer Chiefs to win against Orlando Pirates and go home and still be a loving husband.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
You know, it doesn't have to now, because you are a man, your team has lost, now you have to be all masculine about it. So it's okay for guys to
I also think it's just there's a general effect that alcohol has on people, and that's also what this initiative is. It's so that you drink responsibly as well. You not overdo it, and then not take accountability for your actions, and then blame it on being drunk or blame it on alcohol. You know what I mean? You as the man have the responsibility to consume enough. You know, for you not to take out your problems at home. You know,
Also know when to say, okay, enough is enough. I've had enough.
Yeah.
We've spoken about all the serious stuff. Who's taking it this coming Saturday? Let's start with you, Nakmizi.
Orlando Pirates is taking it.
It's an important clash for that matter. It's an important match for both teams, considering the fact that Pirates did so well last week to even close the gap between them and Sundowns to 4 points.
Yes.
So
Chiefs is 5 points behind. You know, so it's
say three. Say 2 points because we've already.
Because after Saturday you would have collected maximum.
We've got 3 in the back. Boom.
I mean, this is what the PSL is about. These are the 3 like giants of the league from back in the day up till now. So to have the teams in the positions that they are means that we're gonna have brilliant soccer, man. Brilliant soccer.
Give me your score prediction.
2-1, eh? You know, because you know we need to.
Any idea who'll be banging in them goals?
I'm not sure. But I know my boys are gonna be hot on the pitch.
Yeah.
But let me just say 2-1 is the score.
2-1 is the scoreline.
Yeah.
Nakmuzi?
I'm not gonna go easy. I mean, the boys are on form and we've got a point to prove. I say 3-1, especially past Kune.
3-1 past Kune. The 4th match test series between South Africa and Australia kicked off today in Durban. South African captain Faf du Plessis says the test series between South Africa and Australia provides for a great entertainment with both passionate cricket sides ready for the challenge. Since readmission, the Aussies have not lost a test series on South African soil.
The series trophy up for grabs, in what is also a tussle for the 2nd place in Test rankings after India. A series win will see the Proteas seal their 2nd position on the rankings before the cut-off date of 3 April. But they will be hungry to clinch their first home series win over the Aussies since readmission. They've beaten the Aussies in Australia for 3 consecutive series and have boosted their confidence after the recent 2-1 series win against India.
I would say it's the most competitive series that you play. We're both very passionate, competitive cricketing nations, and we try and leave it all out on the field. So it's certainly it's great entertainment for the people watching.
Australia comes into the contest after a 4-0 Ashes series win against England and not having lost a series in South Africa since readmission. And they can overtake the Proteas in the rankings with a 3-0 win. Renee Heiner, SABC News, Durban.
And just an update on that story, Australia won the toss and elected to bat first, and they are currently sitting on 87 runs for the loss of 2 wickets after 24 overs have been bowled. Let's update your football news. The Urban Warriors, Ajax Cape Town, moved out of the relegation zone after defeating Matsatsansa Pitori Supersport United by 2-0 at the Athlone Stadium last night. The Urban Warriors, whose goals were scored by former United players Fakri Lakay and Mario Boysen, climbed to the 14th place on the log on 24 points from 23 matches. Let's take a look at those goals.
Because of how Ajax have set up the stall. Now lost back. Lakay, goal! Against his old club, he's not going to celebrate it. A little unlucky to lose out there. Kabwe will have a second bite. Kabwe will get the cross in. Chance goal! That is a goal! Tucked away by Mario Boysen with the predatory instinct that a top striker would be absolutely proud of.
Yeah, and sporting-wise, cricket, what's happening, Maru?
The Aussies are sitting on 87 runs for the loss of 2 wickets. Like I've already said, Australia, they won the toss and they elected to bat first. So let's see the kind of target they set for the boys.
Yeah, definitely. On that note, that is where we're going to wrap things up this morning here on SABC Newsroom. Thank you very much for joining us. We do it weekdays between 9 and 12 p.m. For myself, Shante Yankees.
And Marumo Kekan, has been nice being with you. Have a good day.
Take care. Bye-bye.